Hey guys, it's Michaela. Today I am drawing my favorite Pokemon. I realized that my sketchbook says July 30th when really it's going to be the 15th when this video comes out. But I really wanted to kind of hop on the Pokemon Go bandwagon. It has been out for 5 days, 6 days today. Today's the 13th and I'm going to post this video on the 15th. And I am obsessed. Completely and totally obsessed with this game. But I did take time out and draw my favorite Pokemon, which is Magikarp. I know a lot of people think I'm crazy because, you should love Gyarados instead. He's more powerful, whatever. But I like Magikarp because nobody else likes him. I like him because he's funny and he's super cute and, I don't know, I just think I like that he requires so much work to make him better. I feel like that's very relative to humanity. Anyway, that's weird. So basically I really thought maybe it would be a fun thing to have this as a tutorial. So right now I'm obviously doing my line work that I usually do with my blue pencil. And I wanted to make sure that you guys notice the lines on the body there. Those are going to basically be my roadmap for where I put the scales later. And then as kind of a call out to the old video games, I wrote splash down at the bottom. It's kind of hard to see in this video, but it'll be better later. Let's see. So I decided to do my line work before I do my markers, mostly because I really wanted to have something to kind of guide my markers. I'm still trying to learn and trying to figure them out because they're not easy. They're fun, they're just not an easy medium. So I'm doing most of my line art right now in an 01 Sakura Micron pen, and then I decided that the outline, like the actual outside lines, I wanted them to be much darker, so I went in with an 05, I think. Yeah, and that's what I'm doing here to kind of make Magikarp pop a little bit. And usually with his eyes being so big, he looks so shocked, and I kind of wanted to make him a little more fierce, so I put some lines above his eyes so that he'd be more angry-like. As I was doing this, I was thinking about my color choices, and so I'm kind of nervous about this because I have an orange marker and I have a red marker, and I don't really have anything in between. I decided that I did want to have some kind of major color scheme throughout the whole piece because Nintendo usually puts a lot of effort into their color scheme. So what I did with this is, the whole time while I was doing my line art anyway, I was thinking about how I wanted to approach the colors. And because if you look at Magikarp, he's mostly red and orange, except for his whiskers and his dorsal fin, and I think the pectoral fin, is that what that bottom one's called? Anyway, those are yellow, and so because there's such a small amount of yellow, and I was taught that if you're going to use a color, you should try to move it around the canvas so that your eye really kind of wanders. I decided to put the splash down at the bottom there, and then use my yellow marker to fill that in, just to kind of add more of the yellow color to the rest of the page. And then while I'm filling in these fins here, my marker is running out, which really sucks because it's my favorite gray. So I'm using my color blender there to kind of maybe spread some of that ink around, and it actually worked pretty well. So if your marker is running out and you need to use it before it dries up, that's a good trick to use. I'm trying to add shading to this so that it kind of looks a little bit more three-dimensional. And I feel like it worked really well with the mouth. And then as I'm coloring this, I'm hoping to kind of get, I don't know, maybe to cover up my line art a little bit to kind of soften it. So while I was coloring this part, I'm using my orange marker to kind of push my ink away to add more depth to these these particular scales. And then when I drew this, I felt like he looked like the actors from The Lion King, like the Broadway Lion King, and it just really made me laugh, so I kind of left it that way for a while. And then because that trick with the orange worked so well on the scales around his face, I decided to use it on his face to kind of create more of a bone structure-like system, which had more like shading underneath his cheekbones. And then moving the color around to the inside of his body, and then using the orange technique, pushing with the orange marker again like I did, to push the red away to create more of a scale using that crosshatch that I had originally in my line art, and then taking my colorless blender and using it just on the tips to even push the orange and the red away from the paper even more to create even more texture to the scale areas. And then I'm still really new to these markers, so I'm kind of a little timid, but also feeling experimental. And as I was using this marker, I was going to color the entire thing in the background that color, but then I thought about how expensive these markers can be and decided that I wanted to save my ink as much as I could and create a gradient in the background. And so I'm trying this thing where I'm not putting down a flat layer of color all the way across, trying to see what would happen if I let it get streaky. Like, the whole point of the alcohol-based marker is that it's supposed to blend really well. So here I am trying to see if I can come back from the streakiness and really blend it. And it actually does work. The more alcohol ink you put onto the alcohol ink, the more it blends better. That's kind of confusing. And then I wanted to try another technique with my colorless blender and put some drops of this around to push the ink away and maybe create water spots. And as I was doing this, I thought, wait, these are alcohol based. I wonder if rubbing alcohol would do the same thing. And so I did this. I grabbed, that was what that splashing was, and you'll see I'll do it again later. Mostly because I didn't want to use up my colorless blender to create that sort of effect. And then I'm trying again to see if I can maybe blur out some of those streak lines. Yeah, and it worked really well. And so this side, you can tell I'm super, like, it takes me a lot longer than it does for the left side of the picture, just because I'm still really getting the hang of it. But as I do it, the more I feel comfortable. And then you can see here I am doing the coloring this in, because gotta move that color around. It was super effective. Yeah, so this side went a lot faster than the right side, and I feel like I really understood how these markers were working together better than I did before. And I feel like the more ink you lay down, the better it blends. So I feel like I don't know, I feel like I learned a lot more during this picture than I did before. And then here you can see I got rubbing alcohol, and then used that paper so that I wouldn't get splash marks on Magikarp himself. But yeah, so then I decided that those weren't pushing the ink away as fast as I wanted them to, or as big as I wanted them to, so I used the colorless blender on specific ones, and then came back in with my jelly roll and added highlights. That cheek highlight really bothered me, and I'll come back and fix it. And then used it on these scales to add even more punch to that texture. I'm really pleased with the way those scales came out. Yeah, so because his face, that really bothered me, I came back in and colored over it, and then tried to use my orange technique on top of that with the pushing of the alcohol-based ink away again, and then came back and colored in around his eye socket to give him even more of an intimidation type of glare. But yeah, so have fun playing Pokemon Go, everybody, and stay safe. I wanted to wet the paper and then do a drop-in effect with the watercolor, which just kind of helps to feather things out a little bit and makes it a little bit easier to get the color around in more of a splotchy pattern. So I'm painting the background and trying to get some good splotchiness, because I really like that with watercolor. I grabbed some paper towel to kind of clean up some of the edges, make it less wet, because it's sometimes if you try to paint onto something that's too wet, it makes it almost impossible. It spreads really really fast all around. And you can usually tell when the watercolor is dry